absolutely refusing to pull even one punch. It's Vicki McKenna on News Talk 1130 WISN.
Never give in. Never give in. Never, never, never. In nothing, great or small, large or petty, never give in except to convictions of honor and good sense. Never yield to force. Never yield to the apparently overwhelming might of the enemy.
Yeah, Churchill was talking about Hitler. And that's what he said to the British people. Welcome to the program. I'm Vicki McKenna. Brian Schimming's in the studio as well. We're gonna allow for some wound licking on the program today, and because you got to move through the stages of grief here.
Yeah.
But for those of you who want to pack it in, lock yourself in a bunker with a bunch of guns and MREs, you know what? You might as well just start doing that this weekend, because that's ridiculous. 799-1130 or 800-838-9476. Obviously, none of us saw it coming. The results of last night. I didn't see it coming. Pollsters didn't see it coming. Scott Rasmussen didn't see it coming. Gallup polling didn't see it. Nobody saw it coming. And yet,
it came.
It came. And you know, as they say, right? It's always darkest before the storm until the lights go out.
Yeah, it's always darkest before it goes completely dark. Well, as a public service announcement, by the way, we should say, take the gun away from your temple.
Mm-hmm.
Come out from off the ledge.
Suicide's a sin.
Pull the razor away from your wrist.
Put the bottle of 100 proof liquor down.
Well, let's not go that
till
far.
This weekend.
Be careful there.
All right, so we'll break down what happened here, and feel free to call in. There's a lot of, there's no simple explanation for this. First off,
right.
The left is declaring the death of conservatism. The left is declaring the death of a center-right nation. The left
I hope they believe that, by the way.
Right. So if they're declaring the death of Tea Party, death of conservatism, death of free market economics, death of constitutional government. That's what they're saying today. And yet the president of the United States won an extra amount of time by the slimmest of margins, and the status quo in American government was maintained. So gridlock in Washington was maintained. And for those of you out there on the Obamacare stuff, remember, a lot of Obamacare has to be implemented through the budgeting process. And so you've got the House in control of the Republicans right now. Gridlock, status quo maintained. Well, I don't know how that's a rejection of conservatism, nor can I imagine how that's an embrace of socialism.
Well, and let's speak to that a second. You've got the results from, of course, Obama wins by 10 million votes, by the way, 4 years ago. He wins by 2 million last night. But he wins by 10 million 4 years ago. And last night, I see here he got 59,700,000 and some thousand, and Romney got 57, so about 2.5 million down. Okay, so, but when there was a referendum on the president in terms of his policies, not in terms of what just happened in this election, because that was not a referendum on his policies last night. That was a referendum on the negative impression created about Mitt Romney, and we'll talk about this in a while. But when there was a referendum on Obama's policies, specifically Obamacare and taxes 2 years ago, his party suffered a historic loss, a gargantuan loss. The reason he won last night is because it wasn't a referendum on his policies.
No, it was a referendum on negatives about Mitt Romney.
Correct.
That's what it turned into.
Correct.
And we'll get to some calls here, so just stand by here, folks. But the idea somehow that we just take down our American flags, we just pack it in, we bag it. I mean, okay, maybe you're thinking that way today. I certainly hope in the next couple of days you get over that, because we're still facing a fiscal cliff. We are still staring down the pike of a massive tax increase on job creators. We are still enduring crushing debt. We are still on the edge of a debt crisis. We are still going to see our health care decimated. It's all still out there. And so if you're willing to bag it and take down your American flag and quit the fight, well, I fine. Hopefully more people than not will be willing to keep it up. Because if you think that a status quo election is enough for you to say, oh, hope is lost in America, up goes the white flag. Winston Churchill facing Hitler, strong, resolute. I can't see it. No, this is way worse than Hitler. It's way worse than having our entire country destroyed by a madman. Although some people would say Barack Obama is destroying our country and is a madman. But we're going to get to some calls here in just a second. And then we're going to set the stage for the battle, folks, because it continues on. And not just in Washington, but right here in the state of Wisconsin. And allow me to offer a bit of a silver, at least silver-plated lining. We just took back the Wisconsin State Senate +2. Mining jobs are coming. Venue change legislation is coming. GAB overhaul is coming. But our first order of business has to be to protect our Supreme Court.
And Scott Walker is still our governor, and his favorables still in the 50s.
799-1130, 800-838-9476. All right, we're going to get to some calls here. Brian Schimming's in the studio with me. We'll do some analysis. You can rage. But, I'm seeing some of it in my inbox. People who just they're going to quit, Well, you know what, then? Feel free to confirm the liberals' prediction that conservatism is dead. We might as well all just become socialists.
Well, and if
feel free to just slice into my paycheck anytime you want, government. You can take away whatever, If I got to wait in line, at a specific time to go to the bathroom because the government tells me we got to conserve water, I've got to compost or something, fine. I don't want to make choices for myself. Do you, Brian?
No.
God, no. Let's just give up.
Yeah.
Get serious.
And frankly, to be very candid, nobody will want to hear this. If you're going to quit because of this, you weren't in it for the long haul.
You weren't in it for the right reasons or the long haul.
You were a temp.
You were a temp, and you were in it for an easy fight. And the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. And once you lose your grasp on it, trying to get it back is a very, very difficult task. We are undoing 50 years of this. And everybody thought we'd be able to magically transform America back into the perfect ideal of limited government and a constitutional republic with a wave of a magic wand, not realizing that there's 50 years of indoctrination and 50 years of incrementally creeping government and 50 years of bad policies by both Republicans and Democrats. Why? We couldn't turn it around. One election, we're screwed.
Well, this gets to the, you know what? The day after Goldwater got creamed in 1964, I mean, we do this every 20 years or so, although I would argue it's horrible, but it's not 1964 where we got clubbed and everything. Last night, this president got reelected by a little over 2 million votes. The Republicans held the House of Representatives, and that was my point before about being a message election. 2 years ago, it was a message election. The president lost multiple U.S. Senate seats. He lost the House of Representatives. When he got up and gave his State of the State speech after that election, a couple of months after, he looked at a Congress that was dramatically different because of his policies, not because, whereas last night, it wasn't about Barack Obama's policies, which sounds it doesn't sound logical to say that because he was on the ballot. But the truth of the matter is Barack Obama kind of ran against himself, but he more ran against a caricature of Mitt Romney that they spent $400 million creating.
Let's go to Alyssa, who's been waiting, and I appreciate it. Alyssa, welcome to the program.
Hi. I am in college right now, and so this loss has, fired me up beyond belief. I was appalled during this whole situation of all the people who were like, oh, I'm just not voting for Mitt Romney just because I like Obama. And they had no real reason. And it just angered me so much. And then when I explained why I was, they're like, oh, I never thought about that. And it's just it made me think that how little that everyone knows about what is going on in the country and how no one is really making the effort to look up information. And it was so frustrating.
You know, I'm glad you called in because the college campus is an 80% den of iniquity. And what we need, because that is where a lot of these ideas come from. It's where a lot of the indoctrination is allowed to fester. And now we've got more and more people we're pouring into college campuses because our government told us that that's the only way anybody's going to be able to get a job, despite the fact that 50% of you guys aren't going to be employed by the time you graduate.
Exactly.
So what you have to do, and it's going to be hard because, you know, some of the college Republicans who signed up this time around, you know, might be kind of fair weather on this as well. But the campus has to be reclaimed, and that is going to take quite a bit of time because conservatives took their hands off the campus a long time ago. But that is where a lot of this comes from. God bless you for hanging in there and still trying to be a force multiplier, even if you're one of the few who are going to be willing to stick around.
Yep.
Right on, girl. Thank you for the call.
Yep.
Here is a quote from a college student right now. 19-year-old college student in southeastern Wisconsin said last night on her Facebook page, "If Romney wins, I'm moving to Canada. He will outlaw tampons because they cause girls to lose their virginity." See what I mean? We got to take back the college campuses. Help me out here.
Don't take the wrong message from that, guys, out on
college
campuses.
Oh, my God. I mean, so there's part of the problem is that, again, we expect a massive transformation. And I thought it was going to happen, too. And I was pretty despondent when the results came in last night. But as I think realistically, we were trying to undo 50 years of creeping incrementalism in big government. And over time, we have gotten comfortable with letting go of our liberties. And so, you know, having an instant transformation of, you know, personal responsibility as the rule and liberty as a model was probably something that wasn't going to happen in one 4-year span.
Well, and remember, and I reminded somebody of this morning who called me a little bit too early at the hotel to tell me how despondent they were. And I said, remember when Ronald Reagan gave his greatest speech, and that was in the Goldwater loss. Now, had Ronald Reagan got up the next morning and said, gosh, I gave this great speech, and Goldwater lost, it's not only a rejection for Goldwater, it's a rejection for me, because I went out and gave the speech that everyone knows. We wouldn't have had Ronald Reagan. He would have been gone. If he would have said, you know what, historic loss, in fact, my name's on it, I quit, we would not be talking about Ronald Reagan today. Let's
go to Bill in West Allis. Welcome to the program. Thanks for holding.
Hey, last night I was watching the pundits on Fox talk about the Republican Party rebranding itself. What can we do we're going to have to change and all these kinds of things. And I'm sitting there thinking, no, that wasn't the problem that happened last night. And people didn't beat us based upon what it is that we believe and we stand for. They beat us on what they portrayed us as believing and standing for.
And so what is our job? Our job is to educate, right?
That's right.
That requires...
Our problem is getting out our message. It wasn't our message.
Well, here's another thing about conservative messaging, is that you believe you're a conservative, and then that's what you do. We have still not achieved a saturation point of this message because we are the ones that have to deliver it. The mainstream media is not going to deliver it for us. Alternative media, which has really caught on and which is really making some amazing changes in the culture of this country. But we don't go out and tell people why liberty's great. We don't. In fact, until this election, you didn't have a major political candidate talking about the free market. And quite frankly, Mitt Romney didn't start talking about the free market until that debate. Otherwise, it was talking about, you don't want your taxes to go up and sort of appealing to people's kitchen table instincts. Somebody needed to defend capitalism. Somebody needed to defend the free market. If you're gonna say, oh, well, it's all over now, we are now in a position where 54% of the American public believes government is too large, makes too many decisions in people's lives, believe the debt is too high and can't be sustained, believe spending is out of control. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, as you say, Bill, it wasn't our message that got wiped out. It was the caricature of our message that got wiped out.
Well, we've talked about this is good. This is a great point.
And I, by the way, would have voted against the caricature of our message too.
Well, yeah, that is a good point. We've spoken before. This was not an endorsement of Obama. I mean, ultimately it is because, let's face it, he won the election last night. So that's number one. But number two, and I think more importantly, not only the point I made before about the huge losses they suffered 2 years ago when they really were voting on policy, what they did is they voted to give him more time last night. He started this campaign. Remember, he dropped over $400 million, and that was just by him, on negatives against Mitt Romney. In the July and August television buys, 89% of the president's advertising were not about the president, weren't about his family, wasn't about his record. 89% were negative on Mitt Romney. Now, what does that tell you when 9 out of 10 ads by an incumbent are not about his 4-year record, but about the other guy?
Exactly.
That's how he won all of his elections.
And he ran away from his record. And frankly, the campaign was flat-footed up until the debates. And we can talk about the Senate race as well, which I also think was a flat-footed campaign. I don't think it was a rejection of
you know what?
Common sense in Wisconsin.
The Senate campaign, actually, that's the interesting parallel here. Barack Obama and Tammy Baldwin both won the same way by going negative against their opponent. Tammy Baldwin had no primary, number one, while Tommy Thompson was going through a very vigorous primary where he was outspent dramatically. So she gets a free pass. He doesn't. He comes out of the primary. They go dark because they're out of money. And Tammy Baldwin spends $3 to $4 million creating a caricature of Tommy Thompson, not the good Tommy Thompson that we all know from being governor, but this new mysterious Tommy
the
Tomster, the monster,
Mitt
and
the
all
monster.
of that. So there's an incredible parallel, actually, last night between the presidential race and the U.S. Senate race in Wisconsin. And that is Barack Obama didn't run on his record. Tammy Baldwin didn't run on her record.
But a guy who
ran against the other two.
A guy who did run on his record, and that would be in Congressional District 1, Paul Ryan won overwhelmingly in his congressional district. Paul Ryan's still our congressman. That was an endorsement of Paul Ryan's work in Congress, and that is a 57-60% Dem district down there. All right, in his hometown. All right, guys, we're going to take a break here, and we'll get to some more calls. Also, Ron Johnson's going to join us. But for those of you who are on hold, we are going to get to you guys. 799-1130, 800-838-9476. All right, welcome back. Brian Schimming's in the studio. We're going to get to your calls, I swear.
Oh, yeah.
Because I know people have to move through these stages here.
We all do.
Because folks literally put their lives into this for a very long time. So, I mean, I guess I'm understanding some of the frustration and people's temptation just to say, I quit. But if we say I quit, then guys like Senator Ron Johnson, who are fighting the good fight in the United States Senate on behalf of liberty as a model, well, then he's all by himself. And
he ain't going to quit.
And Ron Johnson's not going to quit. Senator Johnson is on the phone with me right now. Welcome to the program.
Hey, Vicki. Hey, Brian. How you guys doing?
Well, we've moved rapidly through the 5 stages of grief on this election, and because we have to.
Of course, we started at 4 this morning,
right.
so.
So, I think what we've got to do at this point is sort of walk people through what happened, so that people kind of understand, because this was a shock. I mean, polls, all the data, the numbers, the metrics said, we had a good shot of winning this, and we certainly did. But in the end, it wasn't enough.
Well, I'm not going to be throwing in the towel, and I certainly want to come on and thank all the volunteers and all their tireless efforts. And I want to encourage those folks not to give up either. And what we need to do is we need to double down our efforts. What we didn't accomplish in this election, and it's unfortunate, is we did not inform enough Americans. We did not arm them with the facts and the figures, the truth, not enough of them, to actually come out and vote for real solutions. And so that's what this is all about. I mean, Vicki, Brian, that's why I so appreciate what you guys have been doing tirelessly for years being out there on talk radio and providing that information, discussing these issues in depth. Unfortunately for us, not enough people listen to talk radio, not enough people pay close enough attention. But we have got to figure out a way, and certainly my technique for doing that is talking to business owners, entrepreneurs, anybody who's got a platform. They can talk to other people and be our force multipliers at defending business, defending our American way, providing the facts and figures in terms of what's happened in this nation so we can actually enact real solutions.
Well, now there's a tactic. So what we've never done, we've never had our business community engaged in a way that engaged the employees of a business. You know, they were members of the NFIB or they were members of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and they worked in it with an aggregate message. You want to know what started working on people this time around, although it didn't work well enough, was when individual business owners shared the information about how policy affects employees and explain how a business works. That is something we haven't done any more than and it's the same problem as us taking our hands off campus. You know, we have let go our ability to educate for too long, and now trying to get it back, it just takes more time than we had in the 2 years to try to beat this president.
You know, unfortunately, Vicki and Brian, the political demagoguery works all too well. So you've got the President of the United States, you got Senator Harry Reid. Their only solution literally is let's make the rich pay their fair share, and therefore a balanced approach, like not. Listen, we need more revenue. We need to constrain spending. I'm for a balanced approach as well. I'm just for a balanced approach that actually works. I mean, their solution, and you've seen my charts and graphs on this, is punishing success doesn't even come close to scratching the surface to solving the problem. It just sounds good, and people are drawn to that siren song, that snake oil, because hey, if this all can be solved by just making
quick
the
fix,
top 1% pay a little bit more, we're all for that. Well, it's just simply not going to work.
Yeah, that's everybody wants that quick fix, and I'm going to tell you something. Some of the folks who'd hoped for a victory, just like me, just like Brian, just like you. I guess they thought this could be a quick fix, but these things do not, change overnight. We didn't get to this point overnight. We got to this point over time. And here's the upshot though. Republicans held the House. We've got a firewall in the House of Representatives, a very strong firewall. We've got a deep bench of good, liberty-minded, free market conservatives, young conservative senator in the House. And we've still got guys like you in the Senate. And you know what? I'm worried about Obamacare. I'm worried about the Supreme Court, but we're going to have to figure out a way to triage some of this stuff in the meantime.
We are, but again, the facts and figures are on our side. And what's going to be very difficult for President Obama, Senator Harry Reid, and let's face it, Senator Harry Reid was the one that just said that Mitt Romney's sincere desire to work with people across the aisle, Senator Harry Reid said that was a fantasy that was laughable. I mean, who's the obstructionist here? But the fact of the matter is they're going to have a tough time dealing with the ugly math that is our federal budget right now. And they're going to have to confront the idea that they don't have a plan. Senator Harry Reid hasn't passed a budget in 3.5 years. They're going to actually have to put a plan on the table that makes sense. I mean, the president's going to have to submit a budget that maybe a member of his own party might vote for in the year 2013. I mean, what a concept that would be. So it'll be very interesting to see how they actually grapple with the reality of the situation as opposed to just winning an election with demagoguery and snake oil. Again, but Vicki, I'm sitting here willing to work with anybody who is first and foremost willing to acknowledge the problem, diagnose it accurately, and then work with me in good faith to solve it. So if the president has a change of heart, I'm happy to work with him in a constructive manner, because these problems are way too large to play politics with, and this is the time to put the politics aside and start looking at the reality situation and fixing it. We'll see.
Here's the concern I have. So I'm looking at my inbox here. Here is "I quit. You can't vote out idiots." Here's the leader of an alleged leader of a Tea Party group. "I quit. I mean, I've probably got 10 people telling me they quit. They're not going to bother anymore. They're not going to work for this anymore. They've abandoned it. We're just apparently going to hell in a handbasket. What do you say to folks like that?
I tell you exactly what I tell them, Vicki. Accompany me to Walter Reed or Bethesda or to Arlington, and see the finest among us, the sacrifice they've made. They didn't quit, and we better not quit either. I mean, that's a pretty succinct answer, but that's exactly what I would tell anybody who's willing to throw in the towel. Listen, America is something precious, and this is not the time to throw up your hands and say, oh, we'll never get it done. No, this is a time to dig in even deeper and make sure that we fight every bit as hard as the finest among us have fought.
Well, and
throughout our history.
Well, and Ron, think about this from 4 years ago when this happened. Obama wins by 10 million votes, all this hope and change, all this fluffy, cottony stuff, and people kind of had the same attitude. Oh, we had a bad candidate, this, that, and the other thing. But the bottom line is he won by 10 million votes 4 years ago. He won by 2 million last night. And frankly, that if you take the Chicagos and the Los Angeleses and Washington, D.C.s and New Yorks out of it, he probably was behind. I'm quite sure he was behind in that. This country didn't vote for tax increases, Obamacare, and all of that. They voted partially against a caricature that had been made of Mitt Romney. But this president got reelected by not talking about his record.
You know, Brian, they basically voted on false information about who Mitt Romney was, who Paul Ryan were, false information in terms of the fact that this president has absolutely no plan. All he has is a slogan, forward, whatever that means. I don't have a clue. And so that's what I say. It'll be interesting. I stand ready to work with anybody willing to solve these problems in a common sense way that, where the solution is all about growing our economy, to create good paying jobs that provide the dignity for the middle income individuals to earn their success. I mean, I'm all for that. I don't think this president really has a clue how to accomplish that, but I'm happy to provide him the information to show him the way.
Well, and I'll tell you what, the same problems that existed yesterday are the same problems that exist today. A fiscal cliff, a pending debt crisis, the possibility of a reset of our interest rates, and that would wipe out our federal discretionary budget, an austerity crisis, hitting a debt wall, millions of people, more people out of work, 23 million people either unemployed or underemployed, same problems, no solutions from this president. And so if everybody just decides, to hell with it, well, then you know what? It just gets worse. And I like your point about those who've made the ultimate sacrifice for this precious country. It is a slap in the face of anybody who has made the ultimate sacrifice for this country to just say, "Oh, I quit because we didn't win the presidency last night." Shame on those people. Shame on them.
Well, Vicki, we'll kind of chalk that up. Let's face it. Last night was a little depressing, and we'll give people a day off and let them mope a little bit. But then tomorrow, they'll pick themselves up off the ground, understand what's at stake here, and redouble our efforts. I'm not going away. I'm not quitting. I know you and Brian aren't quitting. The vast majority of us will not. I mean, the vast majority of conservatives really do understand, what a unique country this is and how important it is that America succeeds for not only for Americans, but really for the world. And in the end, that's going to be in our favor. And I truly believe that the truth is going to prevail here.
Ron Johnson, Senator Ron Johnson, thank you. Thank you for your work. Thank you for your dedication. Thank you for your patriotism. You're a great American, and I appreciate your time today.
Thanks for what you guys do. Have a good day.
Guys, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with your phone calls when we come back. Ron's right. We'll give people one day to be stupid. It's like the idiot who gets mad at the boss and then just quits and then wishes they could get their job back. So everybody's got one stupid email you're allowed to send me saying you quit.
Look, this stuff
and
is...
You can be forgiven.
Hey, listen, last night when I was ready to go shoot the neighbor's dog, but I was in a hotel, so I didn't do that.
I was ready to juggle kittens and, start eating...
Again?
Start eating pets. Yeah, I know. Me, Scott Walker, Mitt Romney, Paul Ryan.
Good fiber, though.
Was getting ready to, get together with the pet kebabs. All right, 799-1130, 800-838-9476. Meow.
Kebabs.
Meow. Program. So yes, I just put up, in fact, on my Twitter page, emails in my inbox saying I quit. Good thing our U.S. military never says that. And honestly, you guys have one day. One day. I mean, I'm not the reason why Mitt Romney lost, So, bitching and moaning in my inbox about how, there's no hope left in this country and how, us trying to give you guys some pathways and some tactics to move forward and keep fighting. I'm not your problem. Brian Schimming's not your problem. Reince Priebus isn't your problem. Ron Johnson isn't your problem. You guys need to move through this. And if you truly do believe that this country is not worth fighting for, then tomorrow you reaffirm you quit America. You quit, and then don't bother us anymore. All right? When you quit America, I don't want to hear from you ever again. When you quit this country, when you fall down, when you stand down, when we have millions of gallons of blood spilled to defend this country, I don't want to ever hear from people like that. You know what? Because you're not part of the solution. Now you're part of the drag. Now you're an albatross around the neck of this country. And if there's any hope to fight for the future of liberty in this country, you will have made yourself nothing more than an anvil around liberty's neck. And you know what? As far as I'm concerned, you're no better than the socialists who want to push this country to a debt disaster. You got one day to rethink this. And if you truly tomorrow wake up and you say, this country's not worth it, America is not worth it, the U.S. Constitution isn't worth it, freedom isn't worth it, I still quit. All right. Don't come back. Just please. The rest of us will still fight, and you'll just be a drag. You'll just make it harder for us to pull it back. Let's go to, who's up? Who's been waiting the longest? Let's go to James in Saukville. My God, James, thank you for holding.
Yes, thank you, Vicki. I think your program is absolutely wonderful, and you're great with the information. It helps people out. I'm a retired Marine Corps combat veteran from Vietnam. And the two things I want to say, Vicki, is that there's over $3 trillion sitting overseas of American money that will now be invested in China, Southeast Asia, Japan, and Korea. That money will not be coming into the United States after this election. There's people that they're going to be being laid off in this country and fired because of the tax increases that are coming.
And the regulatory burden. And let me give you, to your point, somebody who a lot of you know and read frequently is a guy named Tim Narens, who is who's a businessman, went to go site in a facility in Zhengzhou, China. Mm-hmm. And the turnaround time, as the mayor of Zhengzhou had explained, for the Apple iPhone 4S factory was about 3 months. In the United States, it would have been a couple of years. The cost of regulation and taxation for the company would have been cost prohibitive in the United States, and so they went to China. So you're right. The regulations are going to stay high. Taxes are going to shove even more money. As Michael Bloomberg said, look, wealth is mobile. It doesn't have to stay in one place. It'll shove even more money to make sure that we are essentially sort of at the mercy of people right now we would prefer to just call trade partners.
Right. People in this country, the manufacturing and the people, they are not going to hire after this election. They will not hire because of the tax problems, Vicki. The other item I want to bring up, and I think it's critical, Vicki, is the student loan situations. It's a sad, sad problem for these young people, and there's only one way to solve it, and that is any college that accepts any Pell Grant money, they have to get rid of tenure at their university, or otherwise they cannot accept Pell Grant money. Get rid of tenure at these universities, and you'll see the costs go down.
Well, I got to say something else about that college loans. We've got a college loan bubble on the horizon that could burst, and it could be devastating. It could be horrible because, again, you're talking about bad risks being forced upon lending institutions backed by the federal government, also known as United States taxpayer. So, yeah, there are a lot of financial cliffs that we have to somehow avoid, and it's going to be a lot harder now. It'll be a lot harder to avoid those cliffs. At the same time, to just simply say, oh, well, all hope is lost. I might as well just jump off the cliffs. We'll just get in the car and we'll drink a bottle of whiskey and we'll step on the gas and kill ourselves.
Well, one thing I want to add, Vicki, is that I'm a member of the Founding Fathers Society, which believes in the Bible and believes in God and Jesus. And if people look at the Old Testament, they'll see that there's always bad times and good times based on the behavior of people. So we're being punished right now because of our behavior.
Behave well. I've got
and we forgot about the 10 Commandments. That's what's killing this.
No, you know what? We have actually people voted on one of those commandments to violate one of those commandments. Thou shalt not covet. Thank you for the call. I really do appreciate it, James. And I do have to move on to some other callers here. And thank you for your service as well. Alan, welcome to the program. Alan. All right, we'll move to Oh, no, Alan is still there. Oh, good thing I didn't hang up on you, man. Thanks for holding.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I couldn't help but notice last night, spinning around the dial, watching all the coverage, that a statement was made about, obviously, the Hispanic vote being the winning vote that pushed Obama over in a lot of the swing states. And Michael Steele, the Republican chair, was on one of the channels and made a comment that every month in America, 50,000 Hispanic young people turn 18. 50,000 a month turn 18. And the question, obviously, then that goes begging is, what is the Republican strategy to assure that we get the majority of the Hispanic vote in the next election? And I guess I would pose that to Brian.
Yeah, that's actually a strategy question. But if I may, before, to James's point, we are talking about people of faith, and abandoning faith is one way to make sure you have no way to converse with people of Hispanic descent.
Well, exactly, and I'm a member of the Republican Hispanic Coalition, not as a Hispanic, but as someone who recognizes the need to deal with this, but not deal with it and just let's open the borders, do stupid stuff like that, but to say, look, Hispanics, 95% of them come to this country to work. They come to this country to work, and mostly the first generation, second generation, they're here to work. They're religious, overwhelmingly more actually than the average. They are value family, value work, all that. All those types of things that are part of the Republican message. But frankly, there is no Republican message to the Hispanics, because if you're,
there's a Democrat message, and here it is.
There's a Democrat
message. We'll give you stuff.
We'll give you what you want. We'll give you what you want. When there is a logical, very solid Republican message to go there and say, look, we're for the same things you're for. We can get there together. We can get there together. If you want to just go and become another protectorate of the government, I suppose you can do that, but I don't think that's what you're here for. I mean, that's an appeal. Frankly, what the Democrats say to the Hispanics is not just an appeal to Hispanics. It's an appeal to everybody. Hey, we'll give it to you free. How would you like it?
Don't just come on over. We'll give it to you free.
We'll give it to you free.
We'll open the borders. We'll not do anything to empower people to secure our borders or to respect national sovereignty. It isn't that hard to simply impose a system that is rational, that in fact does treat people fairly as they do want to come into this country.
Well, and as multiple Hispanic friends of mine have said, the problem you've got, and these are Republicans, by the way, is what you say, and meaning us, meaning Republicans, what you say and what we're hearing are two different things.
That's true.
You say something that seems fair. What we're hearing is you want to put us on a train from the Mexican border. That doesn't work. That doesn't work with Hispanic Republicans either, by the way.
How does that, we've had long enough to figure this problem out.
Oh, I agree.
Well, now we're not going to solve. We're not going to solve the failing of the Republican Party in one show here. But that is, Brian's right that what the left is simply telling Hispanics is all of them. We'll give you free stuff. And so you take generations of people who want to work and you turn them into generations of people whose children don't want to work and who become wards of the state. And that is where the anger and that is where the aggravation comes from. And, having a dependency class of people, importing a dependency class of people is going to crush the country. We can't do that. There's a rational way to talk about that with anybody that doesn't just simply mean, you're trying to send somebody back, or I don't even know. I mean, first off, attrition is something we can work on here in this country, and we don't work on it at all. Right. Secondly, is just simply, not continually expanding a safety net we can't afford and encouraging people who use the safety net to become dependent on the safety net. We have got now 17% of the American public, which doesn't include people who've come over from Mexico or other countries, who are dependent entirely on the welfare state in America. 17%. That's insane. That's a recipe for disaster. That's something, but again, we just don't talk to people like that. We just let the Democrats go continue to ply their, to ply their ways. We'll be right back, guys. After the news, we'll take some more calls at 799-1130 or 800-838-9476.
Phonies, liars, and cheats. You have met your match. Here is Vicki McKenna on News Talk 1130 WISN.
Never give in. Never give in. Never, never, never. In nothing, great or small, large or petty, never give in except to convictions of honor and good sense. Never yield to force. Never yield to the apparently overwhelming might of the enemy.
And welcome back, 799-1130 or 800-838-9476. Brian Schimming in the studio with me. We're going to talk about what happened in Wisconsin, because that bears its own conversation here coming up. You know what? Here's on the issue of quitting. Oh, shame on the quitters. Look, if it gets as bad as some people think it's going to get, that's what revolution's for. I mean, for crying out loud, you don't just say, to hell with it. I mean, if it ultimately gets so bad that, we have now experienced, the absolute intolerable acts. Remember, our founding fathers declared King George to have committed intolerable acts. Our founders understood we will put up with an awful lot of tyranny before we finally say enough. And if we have decided that we have endured the last intolerable act, we will revolt. It's in our DNA in this country. So, you want to quit? I'm buying guns. That's my plan.
Guns and ammo.
Guns and ammo.
Yeah, I mean, what I say, look, and I was thinking about this during the last break. I was on the road a fair amount the last month speaking at victory centers and people doing great work in Racine and in Waukesha and on the North Shore and West Allis and Germantown and places to Tosa and places too numerous to mention. A lot of people, thousands of people, have put hundreds of thousands of hours of work into this. And when you're that vested in it, as I was and you were, it takes a little bit to get through this. But what people have to remember is, you may need to take a couple days to get through this. But the fact of the matter is, other battles ahead. And frankly, if you walk off now, and I understand. I've been at so many losing election night. I mean, we're from Dane County. I mean, we know what it's like to be at a losing election night party in Dane County. But if you walk off from it, I mean, the flip side of this is once you get through this, if you walk off on it, you're walking off on big things. Because you know what? We have a Supreme Court race next April. You know what? Scott Walker, you know where the red dot, whose forehead is? It's on right now. It's on Scott Walker's.
By the way, in Wisconsin, the first order of business must be to protect our courts. Before we do anything.
Our 4-3 majority Supreme Court.
We have to protect our Supreme Court.
And our conservative is up next April.
And if you guys want to stand down at a time when we need to protect Wisconsin's court, to protect the gains that we have made here in our state, Well, Here's my only thing. Don't bug me with it. Just go away. If you decided to bail, just bail. Don't rub people's noses in it. I hate you people. It's all talk radio's fault, or it's all the Republican Party's fault, or it's because you didn't vote for Ron Paul, or it's this or it's that. If you're going to bail, just leave. And just so that we know who's left over and who wants to fight for Pat Roggensack's seat on the Wisconsin Supreme Court,
Right.
who wants to fight to get Senator Van Wanggaard reelected in his district so we can shore up the Senate majority, which, by the way, we have back in Wisconsin by 2. We now have the Wisconsin Senate majority by 2. We increased our number of assembly members last night in the Wisconsin legislature. Scott Walker is the governor of the state of Wisconsin.
With favorables in the 50s.
With favorables in the 50s. We've got mining legislation we can get done now. Venue change legislation we can get done now. GAB reform we can get done now. We protect that court. We protect voter ID. We protect election integrity. Ending same-day voter registration is something we can get done now. So you know what? If you want to bail, just go. Just... don't lash out at the people who are going to continue the fight. We're not your enemies. We're not, we're the ones who are going to keep fighting. So if you're mad because you think America let you down or fine. Don't rub other people's noses in it and make them and try to talk everybody else out of fighting as well. I've probably got 50 people in my inbox. I quit. You suck. I quit. It's you talk radio people lied to us. You know what? If you're gonna quit, bail. Just go. Just leave the rest of us so that we know who is friend. We need to know who our friends are. We certainly don't need to have our alleged friends talking our friends out of fighting. We'll get to some phone calls here in a second, but remember what happened last night in Wisconsin. We got the Senate majority back +2. So Dale Schultz in Richland Center, the problem on the mining legislation, bye Dale. Doesn't matter anymore. He doesn't matter anymore. We can get everything done in the state of Wisconsin. We can shore up our state sovereignty to insulate ourselves in Wisconsin, assuming everybody doesn't just walk off the job. We'll take a quick break. Remember, and we'll talk about this on tomorrow's program because everybody's so politics worn. Protect the court is the first order of business in Wisconsin. Protect the court. We need the fighters to protect the court. We are up +2 in the Wisconsin Senate. In 2014, we will be up +3 at least in the Wisconsin Senate. So, but the first thing we need to do is to protect the court. Because voter ID, Act 10, all of those things will be dependent on the liberals not hijacking our court. And that election's coming up in the spring.
Well, and former governors, including Tommy Thompson, can tell you what it's like when the court's against you. Because, frankly, they can decide to take up almost anything. I mean, look at losing the Supreme Court next spring this way. It would be like taking a Dane County judge and making him the Wisconsin Supreme Court. That's what you're going to get. Only. Yeah.
Only. All right,
so
let's go
you
to...
don't want that.
No. We don't want that. I don't want that. I'm pretty sure nobody wants that. Joe in West Allis, welcome to the show.
Hey, guys. Obama made one yesterday, but he's actually impeachable today. Offensive military force without congressional authorization constitutes an impeachable high crime and misdemeanor. Representative Walter Jones, a Republican from North Carolina, actually introduced the HCR 107, which basically calls on the House with the Senate concurring to do the following. Whereas the cornerstone of the Republic is honoring Congress's exclusive power to declare war under Article 1, Section 8, Clause 11 of the Constitution, now therefore be it resolved by the House of Representatives that it is the sense of Congress that except in response to an actual or imminent attack against the territory of the United States.
Yeah. You're going on, Joe. So you want to impeach the president over an unauthorized use of force.
Exactly.
All right, I'm going to tell you this, and I think, I have heard passionate constitutional arguments on this, and I'm inspired by them. You need Congress to actually act on that.
Right.
And it won't. It won't. You have a better chance of possibly getting criminal charges or at least getting a special prosecutor appointed on Benghazi or possibly even Eric Holder in Fast and Furious than you do actually impeaching the president for an unauthorized use of military force. And so
Point made.
But no one's going to do it. That's the point. The point is that Congress isn't going to do that. And I thank you for that. But if you want to go after Obama, if you want to go after him because he's a freaking criminal, and he is, then you go after him on Benghazi, and you go after him on Fast and Furious. And right now, in fact, Benghazi's not going away. Fast and Furious isn't going away. And with essentially a rubber stamp of approval on a House-dominated U.S. House of on a Republican-dominated U.S. House of Representatives, you should expect to see more of that. And, quite frankly, there are going to be some Democrats who are going to face re-election. In fact, we have 20 liberal senators up for re-election in 2014. You just might get an assist from some of those Democrats on that. So I'm all for going after Obama because I think Obama has acted criminally. I think he's acted unconstitutionally. I would like to see an investigation of Demon Pass for Obamacare because that seems on its face to be flagrantly unconstitutional. I'd like to go after Harry Reid on some of those things. We should do it. But we should do the things that could actually get enough people sort of amped up and angry that the Republicans themselves, and who knows, maybe even some Democrats would sign on. And to my mind, the two pathways to that are Fast and Furious and is Benghazi. Those two things. The Valerie Jarrett secret phone call to Iran is something that possibly is the stuff of a special prosecutor. And the Republicans in the House, hopefully they didn't get a message that somehow they have to go weak in the knees. Hopefully their message was, we're the firewall, we're going to have a backbone that's even stiffer than the one we had before.
But frankly, they can't do as much as I can't stand Bill Clinton, they can't do a Clinton-Lewinsky impeachment. Hey, we're right, you're wrong. Look at this piece of paper. It's they can't do that because they lost the public. They lost the public on as bad as Clinton.
You educate the public on Fast and Furious. You
Exactly.
educate the public on Benghazi, and the public will be with you on both of those issues.
And frankly, be principled but stay relevant, because what happened is they demonized Romney so much that even
on a caricature
and made him irrelevant to folks. And you know what? People, I don't think, hate Mitt Romney coming out of this election. I mean, this was a 2.5 million vote election out of 130 million people. So it's not like Obama won some big landslide. And you know what? They know it at the White House. But as they play crises, they will play this election win as though it's some kind of endorsement. The fact of the matter is, it's not. It's not. And Luntz's focus groups showed it. It's not a huge endorsement of bad policy. And that's why
educate the people is what needs. Exactly. Here's what, in the end, if you want to boil it down to one thing, the conservatives in this country have failed to educate the general populace. We were cocky in these last 4 years. In fact, we were quite cocky because we had some victories to bank, and we just assumed that by the force of our desire and our love of this country, that we were going to undo 50 years. More than that, 70 years of bad policy in 4 years, and we were just going to magically bring people with us. Well, guess what? When we didn't get to set the narrative in 2012, we set the narrative in 2010. But when we didn't get to set the narrative in 2012, when Obama set the narrative in 2012 and the left set the narrative and suddenly we became boogeymen, well, you know what? Your average American isn't out there with a Gadsden flag flying over his house. Your average American is paying about 10 minutes of attention to political news a month. We have accepted that. We have considered that acceptable. Well, you know what? We shouldn't consider it acceptable because we honestly require people to have a base of knowledge to understand the kinds of things that we propose and the kinds of things that we support. The left doesn't need a base of knowledge. They just go out and they say, Mitt Romney's going to take away your birth control. Or Republicans are racist. And that's all it takes for people who aren't that informed.
Well, and frankly, this is kind of a lesson here because the left, if they would have lost last night, they wouldn't have said, oh, God, people just don't get it. I'm quitting. Yeah, they wouldn't have happened. Part of their staying power or part of the reason they often ends up successful is because they hang around. They dust themselves off.
And they're tenacious.
And come back. And they're tenacious. And it's not that our people aren't tenacious, but we kind of live these things in 2-year cycles and we get wound up, and yet the battle is much larger. It would have been so easy to walk off after Obama's original win, but because the Tea Party, because independent groups stood up and said, we're not going to take this, frankly, Barack Obama is hogtied right now because of a Republican House of Representatives that came about because grassroots people rose up and knocked Democrats in Congress out of office, including Russ Feingold, including Steve Kagan up in the Fox Valley, including Dave Obey's seat, even though he wasn't running. So frankly, had we given up 2 years ago, Barack Obama would be running the whole joint right now. And instead, he's handcuffed by a Republican House, and frankly, by the fact that he didn't win by much last night.
We got a status quo election, and
yeah, you really did.
It doesn't mean that Obamacare isn't coming, and it doesn't mean we don't have to be terrified about the Supreme Court, because we do.
Market went down by over 300 points.
Well, that was the reaction. Yeah, that was the reaction to the election on the market. But look, in the end, worst case scenario, last resort, you revolt. There's always that. So the idea you just walk off the country. How about no? Let's go to Tim in Muskego. Welcome to the program. Thank you for holding, Tim. I appreciate it.
Good morning, Vicki. I have 3 quick points, and I'm just going to add to what you've already said. Education is definitely the first part. We Americans enjoy our entertainment way too much, and we don't value our education of our policies and politics. Therefore, when we go to election, we don't educate those around us that we have direct influence in. 1. 2, if you look at the demographics of the voting map, you'll see that this was basically urban America versus rural America, and we understand that the majority of rural America busts their tails. We have good work ethics and whatnot. It's not everybody, but I'm not generalizing, but it's a majority. Because if you look at all the high population areas, it went blue. And if you broke it down county by county, high
population areas are automatically blue. You didn't have to work at the high population in New York and California. Didn't even have to work at it.
And if you look, and it's also with young America, this country votes based upon emotion and logic. But there is far more emotional people, and they are very young and influential. And Obama played that like a fiddle. He was like the Pied Piper leading the mice along the rooftops. And because of that, we have to get back to our founding fathers' root desire of this country, faith in God first. And if we trust in God, as the Bible says, he will provide. If we trust in this government, in this country, the people will let us down when we need them most.
I appreciate the call. And I'm going to say that the reason why we have rights in this country isn't because the government just conferred these rights upon us. It's because our founding fathers understood that these rights were given to us by God. And you can be an atheist and still recognize that rights that are given to you, natural rights that are given to you by whatever power you either believe or don't believe in, that are not conferred upon you by government, are rights that government cannot take away. Unless you let them. Unless you decide to bail. But you're right. And we were starting, and in fact I think we are starting to explain that to people, but that is not intuitive. It isn't taught in schools. It doesn't come naturally to people's understanding. Folks aren't sitting there poring over, the U.S. Constitution and the extra writings of our founding fathers. Most people aren't doing that. It's our job to educate them. And you know what? We really haven't done that except in the last 4 years. We haven't had Milton Friedman making videos for PBS in 40 years. We'll come right back here, guys. 799-1130. 800-836-9476. I had my Madison 800 number in my head. I don't know why. It's a long night. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the program. Brian Schimming is in the studio with me. Starting tomorrow, roll up your sleeves and get back to work because we've got to protect the Wisconsin Supreme Court. The national left is going at Justice Roggensack gangland style. They're already beginning their plan to try to take out the Wisconsin Supreme Court. And that is absolutely essential. That, the conservatives lick their wounds this week and get ready to get back at it. Well, because nothing is more important in the state of Wisconsin right now than protecting our court.
Well, and if you're not a lawyer, which 99.9% of us are not, they will use the Supreme Court to roll back the Walker agenda.
Everything.
We've seen it already in the lower courts. Can you imagine if Shirley Abramson gets one more liberal on the court, has a 4-3 working majority, the Walker agenda it'll get decimated.
Wiped out.
I've seen
entirely.
It. I've seen
entirely. Let's go to Kelly calling in from Madison. Welcome to the program.
Hi, Vicki. I love your show.
Thank you.
I'm just calling because I'm just kind of flabbergasted on how my generation's so misinformed and how we had so uninformed voters coming out. And it seems like a lot of my generation just felt like they're entitled to everything.
And so I'm guessing your college?
Well, I graduated. I'm one of the fortunate ones that got a good degree and have a job now.
Yeah, and you are one of the fortunate ones. So let's see.
But my friends, they feel like with re-electing Obama now that, he's going to save our economy, they're going to get jobs. In all reality, they're still going back to school to get their master's because they have no clue and they're just accumulating more debt.
Yeah, and we're going to be the ones backing that debt, by the way, because everybody should look up college debt bubble and scare yourselves a little bit about that. So your fellow college students, what they haven't experienced is life in the real world. And that usually tends to be a great slap in the face. But
it was for me for taxes.
Me too. But what we have done is abdicated our responsibility to education on the issues of the free market, of capitalism, of conservatism on campus. And you can trace this back to the Vietnam War era. You don't have to go back that far, when we essentially took our hands off campus and the campus radicals invaded academia. They became professors. They became administrators. And so what you've got is you don't have a place where you sift and winnow ideas any longer. You don't have a place that's a free marketplace of ideas. You have a place that goes and further produces an even more substantial indoctrination. And that's something that I cannot stress this enough, cannot be allowed to go unchallenged by conservatives any longer. We have taken our hands off specific cultural institutions to our great detriment and to the detriment of the future of this country. And I can only explain to you that when you're in a bubble, Kelly, and I'm sure you know this, when you're just surrounded by the same people in an echo chamber, you're only hearing the exact same thing. So if your professors are telling everybody that Obama will save the economy and everything's going to come up roses and free birth control, and they're going to believe it, because where else do they go besides the bar? You know?
It's so scary to think about it, like how misinformed they are. And like, especially I work in healthcare and like the whole healthcare bill, and what is that going to do towards my job? And then what is it going to affect like our parents and our grandparents and my future children?
Oh, which reminds me, seniors, Medicare as you know it is toast. Is toast. Medicare as you know it is toast because of Obamacare. So you senior citizens who got conned, you're going to learn a really brutal lesson starting in January of 2013. The answer to the question that you are asking is it requires people like you on campus. You're off campus now, but it requires folks to go out there and demand change on campus. It requires conservatives to have a plan to begin I don't know if you want to call it infiltration. That sounds sort of insidious, but getting the ideas of liberty and conservatism back onto campus. I mean, free speech isn't even allowed in any real significant way on campus any longer.
Oh no! Like when I had my I support Governor Walker sticker on my car, it got keyed.
Yeah, because you're not allowed to have an opinion that differs from someone else. That is. That's Alinsky. That's the thug mentality of the left that teaches people that only correct thoughts are the thoughts to be tolerated. I mean, and that is something, again, it's been brewing for 35 years. We need to begin undoing that as well, and that's going to take some time. And you just hang in there. I'm glad you got a job. I'm very glad you got a job.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
For college-age people today, I mean, what does concern me about the Obama election is we're teaching people by Obama's reelection that it's okay for the economy to suck because we're getting used to it. It's like, and that's what bothers me about college age people now, because really what we need to do. I mean, you have people now in college who, when Obama was elected, were freshmen in high school. or we're and so what we have to do is raise up a new and continuing generation of conservatives on college campuses and make them into the leaders going forward. You have to do it. If you're going to keep the movement going forward, you can't be static.
You can't assume that cultural institutions are institutions that cannot be addressed by conservatism.
Oh.
And I don't just mean marriage. And, we have only a handful. Whenever the left describes the culture war, it's always this very narrow cast idea of what culture war means. But you know what we should be having? We should engage a culture war, but for the hearts and minds of culture in general, a moral war, if you will, to teach the morality of liberty, teach the morality of the free market, teach, you can't just assume people get it. Look, you've got kids who probably tested 130 IQs on campus, and they're coming out thinking that, Mitt Romney wants to ban birth control and tampons. That's a college student who said that. She's probably got a high IQ I posted that up on Twitter today. You can't assume people get it. You have to teach. I had a friend download Milton Friedman's pencil video, the famous pencil video.
Right.
That teaches the wisdom of the free market. And in a way, it also speaks to the morality of it. And we have allowed the left to tell us we have to keep the moral sphere separate from the political sphere, separate from the cultural sphere. Why? We are a moral people, and the Constitution of the United States, to quote James Madison, was written for a moral people. If we are no longer a moral people, it will no longer matter. So this is our charge going forward.
Well, and for folks that are college-age folks or within a couple of years, the person who is most, it's not kids, it's not vacations, it's not the stock market, whatever. The folks who are most focused on opportunity at the moment they're focused on it is somebody graduating from college. So more than any of us, frankly, of the rest of us who've got jobs or are doing what we're doing. But when you're a senior in college and your next step is to leave the frat party or the bar or the whatever in college, and you're walking out with that piece of paper, you got one thing on your mind, and that's getting a job. That's opportunity. It's getting to the next step. We got to talk to folks about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, pick your fronts. So conservatives out there, I'm sick of fighting about Congress, or I'm sick of fighting for a Senate race. Fine. Pick a front. Public schools. You've got children, young children being indoctrinated by public school teachers. Campus. Pick your front. I don't care which front. Hispanic voters. Pick your front. Let's go to who's been waiting the longest. I think Paul from Pleasant Prairie has been waiting an awful long time, and I apologize for that. We're trying to get to as many people as we can. Hi, Paul.
Yeah, good morning. The problem that the conservatives have, and they've had it for a long time, is the minority vote. And the problem is that they never do a very good job of showing up at minority events.
They do a horrible job because they don't
do
go.
a horrible job, but if you look at, I'm an Asian, an Indian, and you always see a liberal at any event we do, whether it's a cultural event or anything. They show up all the time, even to speak for 5 minutes or 2 minutes just to say, thank you for supporting us and let us know what we can do for you or help you out. But I never see conservatives, whether it's in California, here, Canada, everywhere.
Yeah, you know what?
And a bad thing.
That's identity politics, my friend. But
they show up.
The left has decided that, and by the way, apparently we have come to this decision, although I wasn't part of making this decision some time ago in the American politic, that the Democrats are the party of identity politics, and so they can go promise everything to every small group.
I don't know if it's promising, but it's just showing you.
Yeah, I agree with you.
To let people know you can get a hold of
Well, I'll tell you this, though, because you're right. When Mitt Romney went and spoke at the NAACP a few months ago, he got a standing ovation. He just showed up, and he gave a speech. When Tom Tancredo went to the Urban League conference, this was the national convention that they had, he and John Edwards were there, and John Edwards was, of course, promising more federal dollars for education and yada yada. Tom Tancredo was talking about responsibility, was talking about, people taking responsibility, having to make hard choices. John Edwards got booed. Tom Tancredo got a standing ovation because he showed up.
The thing is that most
and
minorities are conservative, socially and fiscally conservative.
You know what? There's an opportunity
but
right
the
there,
thing is that
conservatives.
Our leaders don't take advantage of it.
Yeah, we should chat a little bit more about that because the fact of the matter is it's tempting at times like this to form the circular firing squad and start blasting away.
No, I'm not blasting.
No, I'm not saying you're doing it, but I'm saying the temptation that people react to that.
All right. I got to take a break, Paul. Thank you for that, and I agree with Paul.
I do too.
We'll come right back here, and we'll take some more phone calls. We'll squeeze in a couple of more folks here as I look at my clock, and I'm getting late on time. But we will get some more phone calls in. And to the person who's been waiting 48 minutes to get on the air, you're going to get on the air. We'll be right back. All right, we're going to get some people in on the phones. And poor Judy. Judy's stranded on the phone for 50 minutes.
Are you still alive?
Judy, are you breathing, girl?
Oh, yes.
God bless you. Thank you for holding.
Congratulations. I just want to say thank you for offering your show and that people can put to have their input, and that you do such a great job with getting the issues out there.
Thanks, Judy.
The reason I decided to call this morning is because I was sending Glenn Grossman a congratulations on his win.
Yeah, he won, I think, 71% of the vote. Right. He just won huge.
I know, and I just think he sets an example. Republican legislators should really look to him he for his leadership. He's so responsible on the sanctity of life and pro-life issues, and concern for families is just outstanding. And it just proved to be even more effective, I think, when you look at his numbers compared to the economy, which is so important. All these issues we're talking about are extremely important. I'm not putting them down. But I think when we overlook life, I think they've done a great disservice to themselves, whether it's Republican, independents, or even the Democrats. Life resonates with more people than we want to believe.
Well, here's what Glenn, I think, has done uniquely, and that is he will always engage that culture war I'm talking about. He will talk about the breakdown in the family and the impact on schools. He will talk about the devaluation of children and the impact on the family, and ultimately what happens in the impact on society, what happens to get people to a point where they want to become part of a dependency class. Glenn understands how to bring the nexus of culture into the nexus of politics, and frankly, I don't think a lot of Republicans, understand, as I said before.
It's their loss.
And it's so important. And it's not, it's the issue of family. It's the issue of life. But it's also the issue of education. It is all of the cultural institutions because, listen, your life, civic life, political life, cultural life, all of this is your life. You don't put little pieces of your life in separate compartments and lock them away and only take them out on certain times. I mean, aren't we all Packer fans all the time? Aren't we all cheeseheads all the time? Aren't we all faithful people all the time? And I agree with you, Judy. And that's something that, again, the culture of this country, its cultural institutions, its media, its schools, the family, everything is part of your civic life, and and if it's part of your civic life, it's part of your political life. The Republicans need to, again, use our institutions to explain the moral argument for freedom. You explain that moral argument for freedom, and people will make the right choices about their families, and they will make the right choices about their kids. Sure. And I appreciate the call. I appreciate you holding.
I just think, we're just looking where trust and authority of man seems to be valued more than the trust and authority of God. Glenn does not overlook that.
Neither does Paul Ryan. Neither does Paul Ryan.
Many of our Republicans do not.
And it serves them well.
I wonder what people have given up just like for the sake of, I'm going to get this free or whatever. Have they ever thought about what this is going to mean to their situation?
That's our job. No, it's our job to explain that. And it's our job to...
because we don't elaborate on on education and history and what it's meant. There is a background to what this country was formed on and the reasons for it, and we're just so ready to give it away so we can get what? Birth control pills free?
$8, yeah, $8 a month. And I'm willing to trade my Constitution for $8 a month of a product I'm not even going to use. Thanks for the call, Judy. I mean,
well,
she's exactly right. I mean,
you think you're not going to use it,
but precisely.
Well, and you know, speaking of hopeful things, obviously the governor, the Republicans, you know, recaptured control of the state Senate, huge control of the state assembly. Paul Ryan. I mean, already I've seen 3 or 4 articles this morning basically going, Paul Ryan may be the next one.
He's the future.
He's the future. Barack Obama will be gone in 4 years. And you may have a Paul Ryan versus Hillary Clinton race, which I'd love. You may have a Paul. So, I mean, Paul Ryan, he needs, technically, he's term limited on the House Budget Committee. And, of course, they'll extend him, allow him to extend. But, wow. I mean, Paul Ryan is.
Well, look what Paul Ryan can do in a Dem-leaning district.
Oh,
He makes a clear, concise, moral case for the free market.
Yep.
Always.
Yep.
He shows that exactly what we're talking about here is something that resonates broadly. It resonates broadly across race. It resonates broadly across income, across, faith. It resonates broadly.
He knows how to talk to folks at that level, and he's got a job to do in the House, and he's going to do it for the next 2 or 4 years for sure. But I'll tell you, on the way back to Madison today, I'm buying an Iowa roadmap. I'm going to keep it in the glove box.
Let's go to Phil, who has been holding on. Phil, thank you for holding for so long.
Not a problem, Vicki. First, I'd like to thank you and Brian for giving me a kick in the butt and getting my head on right, first and foremost.
Happy to provide the kick.
Yeah, right. If you ever want more abuse.
Feel free. We need to, we also feel like venting some rage here today.
Well, I was down in the dumps. My mom, she's been listening to you, and you pulled us out of the doldrum. To the people who are going to fold up their flags and go away, then you have given Barack Obama and the progressives exactly what they want. You're taking your toys and going home. Don't complain about them having a temper tantrum and you being an adult when you're being the child now and going away. The war for independence took 8 years, not 1 day. Then we refought it in 1812. You're giving up on your kids, your grandkids, and your neighbor. And if that's your attitude, then go away. And I don't want you coming to me when we do win this thing and get the country right and saying, wow, was that hard? No, you are not nowhere to be found.
Right on, Phil. See, Phil, you just participated in a little bit of butt kicking there. Thank you for the call, Phil. I appreciate it. I'm looking at my clock here, and I'm trying to squeeze in people. Let's see. Pierre. Welcome, Pierre. Has been holding a half an hour. How you doing?
Hey, pretty good. This morning, I literally cried over my coffee, real tears. And then now I've just begun to fight. And I realize what the problem is, and I think I might have a solution. With these elections being so close, we only need a slight edge. We need to come up with a fund. I'm thinking about starting it myself, where we can get donations and just run random TV ads, even on off elections, anytime, explaining what capitalism is, how great capitalism is, the story of Henry Ford, how Henry Ford allowed poor people to be able to drive a rich man's toy, cell phones all over the world, blue jeans, whatever, McDonald's, because of capitalism, not because of socialism.
I love this idea, and there's a group in La Crosse who had a similar idea, and they formed a coalition and are attempting to raise money to do exactly what you're talking about. Of course, they're going to target the La Crosse area, but Pierre, I love this idea. You do it in PSAs. Right. You form a nonprofit group and you send out PSAs. Let me tell you something about radio stations and PSAs, just so you know. We plug holes with PSAs, and we don't really look at what we're using to plug the holes with. We just grab a PSA. So make it, put it on a disc, send it out, say this is for your PSA director, and before you know it, you're actually going to see those things or hear those things start to show up on the air. I'm Pierre, it's a great idea. What we need is people to actually finance this. I don't think it would cost a lot of money, right. But go out and do it. Go out and do it. Please go out and do it, and then you email me if you ever need some help on that.
I appreciate it.
Right on, Pierre. Thanks for the call, and I'm sorry I did strand one person on the line. I got through as many people as I left one.
Well, and I think
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to leave one woman behind. I really didn't.
Well, and of all places for folks to raise the white flag over, Wisconsin.
Wisconsin?
Which literally, we had them, other than this president, think about it this way. Other than this presidential election, the most momentum political occurrence to happen in the country this year was in Wisconsin.
And it was the most momentum in Wisconsin in 100 years.
So this is not the state to raise a white flag over.
All right, what's our keyword today? Tell me what our keyword is. Oh, our keyword is, hold on a second, quick. Text to 36500. The keyword is car. Car is the keyword to 36500. Hurry up and text. You can win $1,000 and qualify to win $50,000. See you tomorrow.